Hi everyone, I'm CaliKim. Welcome to my garden. Watermelon are one of the sweetest treats of the summer. I absolutely love growing them here on this trellis. However, they can be just a little bit tricky to grow. So today I'm going to share with you some common watermelon mistakes that you definitely want to avoid and how to fix them so you can have lots of these beautiful, tasty treats. Mistake number one is choosing the wrong variety for your location and for the space that you have. Now you may not know this, but variety really matters. Watermelon can take up a ton of space and it also can have a very long growing season, depending on the variety that you have. So if you have a lot of space, you want to grow a larger variety, like my Golden Jubilee here or Charleston Gray. You can trellis it or you can let it sprawl all over your garden for lots and lots of melons to harvest. They're very big melons, can grow up to 20 or 30 pounds, and they have a very long growing season. So this is great for gardeners who not only have a ton of space, who also live in southern climates like here in California, where you have at least a 4-month growing season in the warm summer months. Now, if you don't have a ton of room to let watermelons sprawl, or you grow in a place where you have a shorter growing season, you can still grow watermelon. The key is choose a variety that's more compact, smaller, has a shorter seed to harvest time that you can grow in a container. Now my favorite is Sugar Baby. I absolutely love it. It's a small 3 to 5 pound fruit. You can fit a container right on your deck or patio, trellis it, and have beautiful watermelon hanging down. So I love growing it in a little shorty. It's a nice 3-foot smart pot raised bed. You can grab these over on my website if you want to pick one up, or I've got a 10-gallon container right over here. I definitely wouldn't grow it any smaller than a 10-gallon container. I love the smart pots because they let the roots breathe, which is really important for watermelon. So here I've got one plant in here. We're going to add a trellis as the plant grows. We'll have a beautiful watermelon. We can stick this up on our deck and just step outside and pick watermelon to harvest. Mistake number two, and this is an easy one to make, is the planting timing is off. Now, watermelon love warm soil, at least 70 degrees. And if you put your seedlings in cold soil before it's nice and warm and toasty, they may really struggle to grow, may not be healthy plants, which can result in more susceptibility to pests and disease. Or if you're planting seeds and the soil is too cold, it may really affect your seedling germination rate. So this is an easy fix. Just wait a little bit after your last frost date when your minimum temperatures, air temperatures, are around 65 degrees and your soil temperature is around 70 degrees. And you can use the soil temperature to check your soil to make sure that it's warm enough for your little watermelon seedlings. A good little tip to help warm up your soil is solarize it by laying a piece of black plastic over it, which will warm it up quicker. You can start watermelon from seed indoors about 4 weeks before your last frost date, or if it's warm enough outside, like I just mentioned, the minimum temperatures are 65 degrees and your soil temperature is nice and warm, you can start your seeds directly in your garden beds or your containers. So I'm just going to pop in some seeds here in my 15-gallon smart pot. Going to put some Sugar Baby watermelon seeds in, and this smart pot has already been prepared with my DIY potting mix, which has coco coir, compost, worm castings, vermiculite. So it's got a nice good mix of organic nutrients. So I'm just going to pop my seeds in here right at the base of the trellis. I love this variety. It's such a beautiful, small, little compact variety. It's perfectly in your refrigerator and it's really nice to eat in just one sitting. Now I always like to plant more than one seed just to make sure that at least one germinates, and usually both of them germinate and I end up thinning out my watermelon, which is perfectly okay. So I'll pop 2 seeds in here at the base of my trellis. Just poke them about 1 inch down into the soil, cover them up, and when your temperatures are nice and warm, your watermelon seeds will pop up in just about a week or so. Grab your melon seeds in my melon seed collection over on my website. We've got Sugar Baby, some larger varieties, and some cantaloupe too. For those of you with shorter growing seasons, you want to get your seeds started indoors. No more than 4 weeks before you're ready to plant them outside. So 4 weeks before those warm soil temperatures happen. So these were started about 4 weeks ago. We're going to pop one here in my 10-gallon smart pot, but I am going to amend the soil just a little bit. I have one seedling growing in here, but I want to add a little bit of extra compost because things have been growing in here for a while. So I got my little hole dug, add some compost to the hole, a little bit of extra organic fertilizer. Watermelon really do well with some extra feeding. And then I do want to be really, really careful with my watermelon seedling because the roots don't always take too well to transplanting. So I'm going to very, very gently lift it out of my 6-pack here with a spoon. and then carefully placing it in my planting hole. Mistake number 3 is not providing enough support for your watermelon plants. If you're growing them vertically, they definitely will need a good, strong, sturdy trellis. So I haven't installed a trellis here in my 10-gallon. This is my favorite trellis for a 10-gallon container. It's a double tomato cage. So I've got one tomato cage in the bottom, an inverted one with the tines cut up on the top. I've attached it with cable ties and it works perfectly for a 10-gallon container. Now it looks like a lot now in a really tall cage, but believe me, with lots of sunlight, these sugar babies are going to reach for the sky. This cage will do a really good job of supporting them. Now in this 10-gallon container, I've got 2 plants. You really don't want to go more than 2 plants in a small round container because then they'll be competing for nutrients and for water. So I like to plant sometimes extra little seedlings and then thin them out as they grow so the plant has enough room to grow and produce lots of big juicy fruit. And it's always exciting to start to see the watermelon go up instead of out, so you're saving a ton of space. Now, this trellis, on the other hand, is very inadequate for watermelon. And I left it in here just to show you an example. But it's a little bit flimsy. It's a good lightweight trellis for maybe some cucumbers or some smaller varieties of squash, but it's just not going to cut it for watermelon. So definitely install a nice sturdy trellis in your containers, like the one I just showed you, or even like this bamboo trellis that's quite tall and quite sturdy in your round containers. For your longer little shorty raised beds, I love the ladder mesh trellis. This is ladder mesh that you can find at most of your hardware stores in the masonry section. I've got 2 pieces here attached with cable ties, and then it forms a nice little arch over a little shorty for my watermelon to climb. And it's so much fun to see it climbing up over the top as the summer progresses and have the watermelon hanging down. It's really a perfect size trellis and very easy and inexpensive for a container. If you're growing those larger varieties like the Charleston Gray or the Jubilee, and wow, those really pop in the summertime, but they take up a lot of space and they're heavy. You definitely need a sturdier trellis. This is my favorite. It's an A-frame trellis with galvanized metal fencing attached to it. I show you how to make it in my book on raised bed gardening, and it works great for these melons. I've grown them on here for several years. I plant the melons in the back of the trellis, then they grow up and over the top, and you kind of weave the melon vines through the trellis as they grow. You can see I've already done that right here with this Charleston Gray. And the little tendrils will attach to the trellis, but often they do need a little bit of help to get started. And then, because the melons are so heavy, what you do is you want to support the melons as they grow. With a piece of netting, an old t-shirt, or even a piece of tulle works really well. And the past couple of years, I've grown 20 to 30 pound melons right here on this trellis. Now this year, I did move my trellis here to this location because they can climb up over the top and they still have quite a bit of room even to spill here down the hill as they grow, because they're large plants and often they need about 3 to 6 feet of space. So when you're planting them under the trellis, you want to plant them a couple of feet apart. So I've got 3 plants at the base here, but again, I always plant more than I need so that I can thin them out, or if something happens to one of the little seedlings, I've got extra ones for insurance. The sugar babies are a smaller, more compact 3 to 5 pound size. The melons themselves don't need quite as strong of a support as your Charleston Gray or your Jubilees, but I still do like to provide them with a little hammock as they grow, made out of a pair of pantyhose or an old t-shirt, and it works really well. You just attach it to the trellis and it supports it until it's time to harvest them. Mistake number 4 that can really affect your watermelon harvest is fertilizing incorrectly. Watermelon are super heavy feeders. They need a lot to produce those big, heavy melons. So it's very important that you stick to a very regular fertilizing schedule. Now, what I like to do is at the time of planting, I already added my compost, my organic granular fertilizer, my worm castings to the soil. That's a good time-release fertilizer that will feed them over a couple months period. However, they definitely need some water-soluble fertilizer, especially when you plant them. You want to give them some high nitrogen fertilizer for lots of green leafy growth. You want lots of green leafy growth for lots of leaves, so the leaves can photosynthesize, take up the sunlight, and turn that energy into nice, sweet, juicy melon. So my favorite for nitrogen is fish fertilizer. I'm going to add a couple tablespoons here to my watering can. It's very inexpensive, readily available, and I'll link up to all the supplies I'm using in the video description, so it's very convenient for you to find products that really worked. I've used all these in my garden for years and they work really well. Now, another thing I add to my watering can for my plant cocktail is vermistera worm castings. Worm castings are super important for strong root growth and also for healthy plants. They have lots of really good beneficial bacteria and microbes, and watermelon are very susceptible to lots of different plants and diseases. So you definitely want healthy plants for lots of watermelon to harvest. And give it a nice good soaking. It'll drench all the way down to the roots. So that's how I like to fertilize my watermelon right at the time of planting. Now this one over here has been planted for about a month or so, and the fertilizing doesn't stop there. What I'm going to do now at this point, about a month in, is give these little plants a little handful of compost. It's called a top dressing. I'm going to peel apart the mulch here and put a little handful of compost around the base. Kind of work it in very lightly with my hands, and then give them another little dose of my plant cocktail. This one has the fish fertilizer for nitrogen, the vermistera worm castings. I'm still going to give them nitrogen at this point because I want them to have a good leafy growth. Continue with that. But when the plant starts to flower, and this is a critical mistake you don't want to make, you need to back off on the nitrogen. And the reason for that is you want the plant to start producing flowers and then start producing fruit instead of focusing on leaf growth at that point. So you can see here the little flowers are just barely starting to form. So this will probably be the last dose of nitrogen I give this plant. But I'll continue adding compost to the base of the plant and giving them the water-soluble worm casting tea all the way up until harvest. And this way I'm supporting my plant with lots of good feeding, which will give me tons of good watermelon to harvest. Mistake number 5 is improper watering, either inconsistent, underwatering, or overwatering. Now, watermelon does need a lot of water, hence its name. It's made up of 90% water. So you do make sure you have to water consistently. If you're kind of fluctuating with your water, your plants are going to get stressed out and they're just not going to grow as well. If you overwater, however, it can cause a lot of fungal issues and root rot. So you do need to be consistent. Now, the best way I like to water is by installing drip irrigation in my watermelon beds. It gets the water right to the roots where the plant needs it the most, gives a nice slow and steady drip, and you can water it on a schedule. That way your plants get the water they need when they need it. Now, one thing I like to do is kind of hill up my plants here just a little bit so it has really good drainage and the water doesn't just settle around the roots and cause root rot. Drip irrigation really helps a ton for watering deeply. If you don't have it, however, just do make sure you water with your watering can or your hose deeply. So water your plant, let it soak in, then water again, and this ensures that the water gets all the way to the roots and really encourages deeper rooting of your plants, which is going to help a ton with lots of watermelon production. Now, here's the key thing about watering. When it gets close to the time to water your big, beautiful, juicy watermelons, you want to back off on watering. Let the soil dry a little bit in between waterings because excess water at that time can cause your fruit to split and crack, can introduce bacteria into the fruit, and it can cause your fruit not to be quite as sweet. Mistake number 6 is not having a pest and disease prevention plan before you start your watermelon. Now, the problem with watermelon is it's very susceptible to a lot of different pests like aphids and beetles, as well as diseases like powdery mildew, downy mildew, fusarium wilt, and all kinds of things that can really destroy your watermelon crop. Now, we're partnering with Monterey for this video, and I always recommend having a really good insecticide and a good fungicide available for prevention and for control. As far as disease go, prevention is completely the best cure for disease. You got to stop the powdery mildew and the downy mildew in its tracks. So my favorite fungicide is complete disease control. I always drench my watermelon plants at the time of transplant with complete disease control as a proactive approach. Now this product contains beneficial organisms that colonize the plant's root zone, which really increase its ability to resist disease. The good bacteria feeds off the simple sugars that the plant makes through photosynthesis and move through the tissues in the plant and finally back through the root zone and then back out into the soils where the bacteria gives off a lipoprotein that kills the bad disease. So the proactive approach really does help prevent powdery mildew, but often it does occur later in the season. Now, powdery mildew is a fungal disease that appears as a white powdery coating on the plant leaves and stems. And whenever you see this, you want to spray the plants at the first sign of the disease outbreak to halt the spread and protect your watermelon crop. Not only is a good fungicide super important to keep around, but a good insecticide and miticide is very important to help protect your watermelon crop. So Monterey's Takedown Spray has really helped me keep control of aphids and anything that kind of creeps and crawls and sucks on the leaves of your plants. It comes in a concentrate, so you just dilute it in a spray bottle according to the package directions. It kills lots and lots of different types of insects, and the cool thing is it kills the larvae, eggs, and the adults. Now I don't have any bugs on my watermelon plant yet, but I do like to spray the soil to kill any eggs or larvae that might be in the soil, just as a preventative measure. And then if I see any bugs later on in the season on my plants, I keep a bottle of this made up and ready to roll so I can just spray at a moment's notice. And I had a ton of aphids on my kale last week and it just knocked them down and killed them in seconds. It's very, very effective. I'd love to hear in the comments what you learned from this video and how you're going to correct some of these mistakes that you might have made in the past. Thanks for watching. See you next time in the garden. We did it. I always wanted to grow another large melon. This is heaven. The juice is literally dripping off my face and off my fingers.
We wish all of you could be here with us.